The central theme of the passage is. Now, just by a cursory glance, these options might be a little confusing. They might be close, but this question can be made quite easy by looking at the coverage that each option has on the passage. We know that a central theme has to be an option which is featured all across the passage, at least throughout the passage, if not the entirety of the passage. Let's look at the options. A says the works of Pablo Picasso. Now, the works of Pablo Picasso, in this, the mention of Picasso is there at multiple points in the passage. In fact, in each paragraph. But that said, this talks about the works only. A bit of grammar comes to play here, because when we say the works of Pablo Picasso, we are talking about the art made by Pablo Picasso, not just the work of Pablo Picasso, which was a very strong influence of Cubism. In fact, the new kind of art that Picasso developed, it came to be characterized as Cubism. It was called Cubism later on, as we see from the second paragraph. But when we say the works of Picasso, or the paintings of Picasso in particular, because this passage is talking about paintings, we talk about only one work, which is in the first statement itself. It was also in the same year that Picasso completed La Demoiselle d'Avignon in the atelier of his Montmartre apartment house that was called the Bateau Lavoie. The only work that has been mentioned is this one, La Demoiselle d'Avignon. No other works have been mentioned. And this, if we remove this highlight, this is barely one statement of the passage. So this clearly cannot be the central theme of the passage. So A is incorrect. Option B says the difference between Renaissance and Cubism. The difference between Renaissance and Cubism, Renaissance mentioned here. This statement itself gives us the points of difference between Renaissance art and Cubism. If we consider this statement in its entirety as well, then also this is just one half of a paragraph from the entire passage, still not valid, not fitting the central theme of the entire passage. So B is incorrect. Option C tells us the difference between Fauvism and Cubism. Fauvism has been mentioned only once. Fauvists have been mentioned here once. That said, the difference between Fauvism and Cubism are mentioned here. If we consider the statements by the experts, one is Apollinaire, of course, then the statements by Edward Fry and Golding, if we consider them, if we consider this paragraph entirely, then also we see that the difference between Fauvism and Cubism is apparent in only one paragraph. Fauvists, as mentioned here, if we take this as a point of difference, Fauvists were also interested in Negro sculptures, but Picasso's interests were different. So even if we consider this is not exactly directly relevant, but then because it doesn't give us a difference between Fauvism and Cubism, it gives us a difference between the interest that let's call him the progenitor of Cubism, Picasso, had in Negro sculptures versus the interest that Fauvists had. So if we consider, even if we consider this as a statement, it still applies to two limited references from the passage, not the passage in entirety. So this also should not be considered as the central theme. C is incorrect. Option D says the rise and spread of Cubism. Now this is quite valid, and this scores where the other options were limited. This one covers the entire passage because we are talking about Cubism being developed. The first paragraph says this is an important work which foretold the future development of Cubism. We see the aspect of the ideas or the traditions, or rather the breaking of traditions, breaking away from traditions that came to be characterized as Cubism. So these all connect with the rise and spread of Cubism. We see the third paragraph speak about this in the last statement, the last rather two statements. In the same year, Braque held a one-man show at the Kahnweiler Gallery, and it is said that the word cube used in a review by Louis Vauxelles at that time was the origin of the term cubism. From 1909 to 1910, both Picasso and Braque advanced even further in dismantling the object through cubism, which tried to depict the reality of an object without using the traditional laws of perspective and shading. The fourth paragraph says what we may term analytic cubism reached its peak around 1911. And this is further explained again and again. The last part of this, in fact, on seeing Picasso's portrait of Vollard, 1909-1910, we may say that if the social and historical factors can for a moment be forgotten, a portrait by Renoir would seem closer to a portrait by Raphael than it does to a cubist portrait by Picasso. So we find that, yes, all right, so some of the other works of Picasso have been mentioned here, which gives a little more evidence to option A. But that said, we've seen how option A only connects with one reference. Let's highlight that in a different color to make the difference apparent. Works by Picasso, one reference is here, and the second reference, as we have noticed, is here at the end of the fourth paragraph, the end of the passage. That said, the green highlights, which represent the highlights of option B, they cover the passage much more than the first option does. So clearly, D is much more relevant as an answer than any other given option. So we can qualify it. The correct answer is option B.